So, I'd like to talk a little bit about climate change. Now, right off the bat, I gotta say that as a graduate student in geophysics, having read many of the relevant papers myself, of course I believe that climate change is happening. It's not a belief, it's evidence-based. It's a theory which has made predictions which have been confirmed many times. So, if the evidence is so clear and straightforward, why did so many people not believe in climate change? And the answer, of course, has got nothing to do with evidence. It's like Upton Sinclair said, it's harder to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on him not understanding it. Now, of course, most of our salaries are not directly tied to the burning of fossil fuels, but we get many indirect benefits. Cheap electricity and plentiful automobiles being one of them. And there's a lot of propaganda out there that says if we regulate the burning of fossil fuels and the release of CO2, it's going to have a huge devastating effect on the economy, so people think their salary depends on it. So it's kind of a shoot the messenger approach. They'd rather just ignore inconvenient facts, especially if there's a large body of supporting voices in the media telling them that it's okay to do so. But, that is what it is. I'd like to talk about some little pieces of the actual real evidence for climate change and the effects of climate change. Now, I'm a graduate student in geophysics, but I happen to be specializing in glaciology. So I'd like to talk about how climate change is affecting the world's ice sheets. But before I get into that, I'm going to have to do a bit of a segue into the physics of how ice sheets actually work and what their mass balance is.
Ice sheets are basically giant conveyor belts. They take in snow, which falls on their surface. They metamorphose that snow into ice through the pressure of more snow falling on top, and they transport that ice to the ocean, where it is discharged either as meltwater or as icebergs, which break off and calve and can sometimes float quite a long distance away from the ice sheet before they too finally melt. Now, in terms of mathematical equations, this basic statement that ice sheets are big conveyor belts moving mass from snowfall areas to melting areas is expressed by saying that the rate of change of the ice surface elevation is equal to a minus sign times the spatial gradient, that is the divergence in flux, with flux being ice thickness multiplied by ice velocity, plus a source term, where the source term can be positive in areas of net snowfall or negative in areas of net melting or iceberg calving. Now, the term of importance here is the first one, the rate of change of the ice surface height. When ice sheets grow, they effectively take mass out of the ocean because water evaporated and fell as snow. When ice sheets shrink, they add mass to the oceans via melting and icebergs. And so what will determine whether sea level rises or falls is the total rate of change of the ice sheet surface, integrated over the whole ice sheet.
Now, an interesting consequence of this basic mass balance dynamic is that a warming climate doesn't necessarily guarantee you a shrinking ice sheet. You could have a situation where the climate gets warmer and ice sheets actually grow when sea level drops. Because when the air is warmer, it holds more moisture, and so you have more precipitation. If you have more precipitation, you have more snowfall. Which is, by the way, when people say, oh, there was all these huge snowstorms last winter, therefore global warming is a myth, they're out to lunch. But anyways, with an ice sheet, if the increase in snowfall due to a warming climate is greater than the increase in discharge to the ocean, the ice sheet could actually grow, even in a warming climate. So the question is that what's actually happening? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is no.
And in the next video, I'll go over the evidence which actually tells us that answer.